cats and dogs, fire and ice, toothpaste and orange juice?
It seems that electric vehicles and internal combustion engine vehicles have been lumped into that same category of things that don't mix. But to us, that doesn't make sense. Take our test cars, for example. We have our BMW 3 Series and our Tesla Model 3. But the similarities go well beyond the naming conventions. They are both sporty four-door sedans with seating for 5. They're both all-wheel drive. They have very, very similar physical dimensions. And most importantly, they both do the same things and they use the same kinds of tires.
So we have two vehicles that, if you can get past that whole EV versus ICE debate, are essentially direct competitors to one another. And knowing that, we're taking a slightly different approach to this test. We have the exact same tires we'll be comparing on each vehicle, but the tires won't be the main focus. Our goal is to compare our experiences with each vehicle and see how our testing applies across different vehicle platforms. For this test, we used 235/40/19 tires on 8.5-inch wide wheels for both vehicles. We ran the factory inflation pressures, which is 42 psi square for the Tesla and 36 front and 42 rear on the BMW. Even though the specific differences among the tires in this test is secondary, it's good to know the lineup. The tires we used are the Bridgestone Potenza Sport AS, Continental Extreme Contact DWS 06 Plus, Goodyear Eagle F1 All Season, and Goodyear Eagle Sport All Season, which is an original equipment Tesla spec, and the Michelin Pilot Sport All Season 4.
Tesla, which is our representative of EV, it's Team EV, and our BMW 3 Series, which is Team Internal Combustion Engine.
We do talk about how the 330, our BMW 330, and this Tesla, they ostensibly, they're the same vehicle.
They are.
When it comes to buying tires and frankly just how they drive. Yeah, they're very different in many ways, but in a lot of ways they're the same.
The perception is EVs are quieter.
Yeah.
And we've driven back to back, oh my gosh, there's less sound deadening for sure in the Tesla. You hear tire noise more because there's less sound deadening.
The body, BMW has been making quiet sedans since its inception,
Yes.
And the engine isn't making a lot of noise.
No.
Unless you're on the throttle, you don't hear it.
Smoothness, I love the EV driving experience. Just no shifts, just that surge of power. Sure, absolutely.
The regen. The regen is great too.
Despite the differences, or despite the seeming disagreement over these things, we are finding more similarities than we're finding differences between these two cars.
Need to bring the world together.
This video right here, this test, they're very similar in ethos. They're both small-ish sport sedans, 4 doors. The BMW is quieter than the Tesla. It rides softer than the Tesla.
Yep.
It doesn't have the instantaneous torque that the Tesla does, but it's plenty quick. If one was the right car for you, you could absolutely cross-shop the other one with no big difference. When we were testing tires, we found very similar results. We came to the same place. There are little bitty differences here and there on the road. But in general, the order of the tires was the same. The magnitude of difference between scores was very, very similar.
Yep.
It's just little idiosyncrasies.
I think it was arguably less sporty than the Tesla. It could accept some of the slower responding tires on the road and certainly on the track.
Yeah. The suspension tuning is a little different between them. So sometimes you'll find a tire that pairs a little better with one or the other. And the steering is a little different between the two cars. It's faster, more immediate in the Tesla, and it's a little bit slower and more relaxed.
Which would reveal some things. And the BMW was actually more accepting of some other underwhelming traits.
Right,
some of the other tires,
the Tesla brought to life more.
And that's an important distinction for sure.
It is, right. So you can differentiate between the two, but ultimately, whether we were testing in an EV or testing on an ICE vehicle, we came to the same place. We came to the same conclusion.
We all know that tires have an impact on vehicle efficiency, whether we're talking about watt hours per mile for an EV or miles per gallon for an ICE vehicle. Since EVs are more efficient than ICE vehicles, tires are a larger percentage of the total energy equation, and therefore they have a larger impact on efficiency. In this group, we found 4 tires that are essentially within the noise of our testing of one another, while the Tesla OE Goodyear tire was a noticeable step ahead. We currently don't test for impact on MPG for our ICE vehicles, but we know from our past testing history that it's incredibly rare to find more than a fraction of a mile per gallon difference when comparing new tires within the same performance category. No matter which tire you choose though, the BMW is the undisputed king of highway cruising here, as we've achieved over 500 miles of range on a single tank in the past, and our Teslas can barely manage half of that. Between the two vehicles, the BMW had shorter braking distances in the wet, likely due to the 300 to 400 pound weight advantage it has over the Tesla. Both vehicles were equally well behaved in our emergency braking, and we had one rank order change in tires between the two vehicles. On the Tesla, the Michelin had the shortest braking distance, and the Continental earned top honors on the BMW, though admittedly there was only an 8-foot spread across the braking distances of the top 4 combinations of tire and vehicle. Around the skid pad, we had to keep understeer in check with the BMW, and the Tesla required careful attention to the rear axle, but the results were the same. The Tesla had the advantage laterally for every spec, and the only difference in order was the Eagle F1 All Season and the Michelin tied for top results on the BMW, while the Michelin led outright by a small margin on the Tesla.
Track testing is the best way to evaluate the overall drivability and combined capabilities of both tires and vehicles, and the Tesla was the faster of the two. It was anywhere from 0.9 of a second to 1.2 seconds faster than the BMW on every tire, and the rank order was identical for both vehicles. Even more impressively, the difference in lap times between the specs was almost the same on the Tesla as it was on the BMW.
BMW, all-wheel drive, not the fastest steering in the world, and very, very stable, even in the wet. So front axle traction is really a boon for this vehicle. Anything that can make the rear want to move around a little bit more, anything that can prevent you from being punished by trying to overlap braking and steering, or if you just don't slow down enough, those sorts of things. Despite the differences between the two, we still found, same for our subjective evaluations, objectively, I believe it was identical rank order for both braking and skid pad.
Front axle authority certainly helps engage the rear on this car that's reluctant to engage the rear. But also, if you do have a really sharp and responsive tire on the front of this thing, you can overwhelm it sometimes a little too quick if it doesn't have the traction to back it up.
Yep.
I think we found that on a couple specs in this test, especially coming through here on the slalom. You just kind of shock it into understeer. So that wasn't any good. So that's good and bad.
Big difference between testing with the Tesla and testing with the BMW. We got to the same place, we found the same characteristics in all tires on both vehicles, but the deficiencies are magnified in the Tesla. But man, in the wet, we are right now on the original equipment Tesla tire, not this Tesla, but the next generation Model 3's original equipment Goodyear Eagle Sport All Season.
I would say it's surprising, but it gives you like a quick little brief as you're just getting onto the track, even before you really start driving at full pace.
Right?
It's like, hey, I'm not going to be very good.
This is a bad idea. The lateral force that it can generate, the longitudinal force that it can generate from all the torque that it has. And with this tire, or any weak tire, it just snaps over the edge.
I can work with that. What I can't work with is just the terminal understeer that develops on a tire with weak front end authority. If it's gotten to a point where it's understeering that bad, the throttle won't fix that.
Right, and they'll just keep pushing more.
Right, and that is, oh God, that's just the worst.
Though it's not as bad in this as it is in the BMW.
Right.
Or maybe it's just edgier in this than it is in the BMW. The BMW is gentler in the way that it does it. Key takeaway is, even though there are differences between the vehicle platforms, right? Of course, that's inevitable. The testing found the same things on all of the tires, subjectively and, for the most part, objectively too, which is pretty awesome.
In the dry, the BMW again stopped 5 to 8 feet shorter than the Tesla, depending on the tire, and the Michelin delivered the shortest braking distance for both vehicles. with around 1 foot separating the second tire from the third, and 1 to 3 feet separating fourth from fifth for both vehicles, the slight shuffle in finishing order isn't surprising, as those numbers are arguably within the noise of our test results. The results again were tightly grouped on the skid pad, and the Tesla again held a very small advantage in lateral traction over the BMW. The rank order for both vehicles aligned, and the difference between each spec again was nearly identical across test platforms.
Just like we found in the wet, the Tesla lapped our dry track about 1 second faster than the BMW, which is a significant difference, but also admirable for the BMW given the power deficit it had to overcome. On both platforms, the Eagle F1 All Season and Pilot Sport All Season 4 essentially tied for the fastest laps, with the Goodyear holding a 0.07 of a second advantage on the BMW, and the Michelin claiming victory by 0.04 of a second on the Tesla. From there, rank orders were identical, and magnitude of difference was very similar, almost to the point that you could just add a second to the Tesla's time to deduce the BMW's time for each spec.
42 PSI.
You know, that actually is a good point to make. The pressure differences between the Tesla and the BMW, even though it's the same tire size, obviously different vehicle,
Yes.
and different pressures we're running.
And that's one of the things about the Tesla is it puts so much energy into the tires. It has a bit more mass than the BMW. It has a lower center of gravity than the BMW, so it's throwing things around more. It also has more instantaneous torque, of course. So if you have a tire that is a little smeary, a little smushy, that doesn't feel as like planted and stable.
No unsupported tread block can hide from this car.
Correct.
And that's something we found between the BMW and the Tesla.
So for the PCS 4 and the Eagle F1 All Season, they are like very sporty feeling tires, and they did a great job on this, on the Tesla.
Yeah.
The Continental weirdly wasn't quite there. Like it was the missing link between the top two and the bottom two in this test. And the OE Goodyear, oh, you know it. So this tire and the Potenza Sport AS, both of which feel a little bit more like touring tires than ultra high performance all season tires.
I think that popped out of my mouth mid lap.
If you try to like throw it through the slalom here, you'd think like, oh, it'll be cool. I'll just rotate it, and it'll be like, no. You have to be careful about how much energy you put into it, because it has that like pendulum effect where it keeps magnifying, and eventually you're hopefully way behind. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you're backward and off the track. The BMW is a little softer. A lot softer. It's
also
pretty hard edged. Yeah.
But once you kind of like trust it, like, okay, the tire here has some grip, it's going to accept this, then you kind of get through, but you're just kind of teetering back and forth.
Feels top heavy.
Yeah, the Tesla, you're just kind of carving back and forth.
More lateral movement, less lean. The BMW actually sort of masks a little bit of lack of athleticism of the tire more than the Tesla does. If there's an issue on the track, the Tesla is going to expose it. Whereas the BMW, you kind of can work with the tires a little bit better, you know?
Between the two vehicles, there are pros and cons to each option. The driving experience is different between them, and your use case will likely determine whether fueling or charging fits in best with your lifestyle. But there are more similarities than there are differences.
And more importantly, our test results aligned almost perfectly across both vehicles.
We hope you found this video informative, entertaining, and helpful, regardless of what, where, or how you drive.
We found a lot of great insights here, but we're not done yet. We're going to continue this test on the ice and in the snow later in the season, so be on the lookout for those updates in early 2027. If you have any questions or other feedback, leave it in the comments section below. We try to read and reply to as many of those as we can. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.